First of all, everybody, welcome to this event about the future of no-code, which is a 2DR event, which is named actually after second digital revolution, because that's what we believe it is, no-code/low-code. Before we start, some quick information. So this is the first satellite event that we have, but there is a second one about digital business models with no-code coming up on 15th of October. Another one on MVP building with no-code on the 29th of October. And the main event, of course, on the 12th of November, entrepreneurship meets no-code. So make sure that you sign up to those events too. We have plenty of insights coming. But for today, we're going to be focusing on the future of no-code. And before we even discuss about the future of no-code, it's maybe important to understand, because I don't know where you stand, what is no-code? And where do we stand today? So no-code, generally speaking, is actually a global movement around visual development, meaning you can build applications, great websites, automate work without coding skills. So that's the main promise of no-code. No low-code. Obviously, there's a small difference here, but we're also going to discuss the difference between no and low-code tonight. But generally speaking, when you think about no-code being something that enables people to build software or to automate whatever they want to automate with software without having to code, it means that people who maybe have a business background like I do suddenly can also take part of the digitalization actively and build stuff on their own. I like to give this example of being part of this digitalization, trying to launch a product, trying to launch an online business or to automate work is without knowing how to code is similar to the wish of writing a book, but you don't know how to write. You'll always need someone to write it down, and you'll never really understand if what's been written really matches what you want to say. So no code answers this need. For people like myself and many others tonight who actually would like to build software without coding skills. There's obviously another aspect to it, which is people who know how to code but who want to develop software in a more efficient way, which would also brings us to low code, no code, and what it will mean in the future. And I want to open it up to what it means to the innovation, but also to our society in general. The democratization of software means many more people will be building solutions, meaning that you don't need to target big problems anymore to build the software. You don't need to go raise hundreds of millions to build a solution if you can build it on your own. So what we'll see is many more people will be empowered to build their own solution to their problem that they're facing, meaning it's going to be way more ideas being actually implemented. And that's good for everyone. That's good for myself, as I'll be able to build my own solution, but that's good for people who are not served so far, because their problem is not big enough to be solved. And that's what we see right now happening in the no-code space, and that's why we see so much people getting involved in the space. It's exciting. But the question today is, what will happen with no-code? What is the future of no-code, and what will this trend become? So to discuss that topic, we have great panelists here today, and I'll give you a short introduction of who will be joining tonight. Of course, they'll be able to say more about themselves. First of all, we have different views, which is super exciting. We have the vendor view, people who are actually providing software to build no-code apps. And I'm speaking about Mariam, the founder of Softr. And Softr is a no-code app builder that helps you build a website within 5 minutes. She, by the way, will also talk on our main event on the 12th of November, which is the keynote about entrepreneurship meets no-code. So really happy to see you here, Mariam. You're not the only vendor tonight. We have Morris from Ninox, and Ninox is a development platform that allows non-technical users to build powerful business applications. So that's the focus. And also good to know, Ninox is the main sponsor for this event and also the main event on the 12th of November. That's not all. We have Eddy from WeAreNoCode. Hi, Eddy. So WeAreNoCode empower the next generation of non-technical founders through no-code education, community and services to build startups with no-code. An exciting view that we don't speak enough about is the low-code aspect. And we have Nuhi tonight, who is the co-founder of ChangeMakers. And they are integrating low-code applications into existing landscapes and helping companies to grow that way. So we have tons of insights on how corporate interact with no and low code and how low code interacts with existing IT landscapes. So I'm really excited to have him in the. Finally, we have JT in the house from NFC NoCodeFounders. And NoCodeFounders is the #1 no-code Slack community and platform for non-technical founders and entrepreneurs. And by the way, today he just launched NoCodeFounders 2.0 on Product Hunt. So if you want to give him some love, just go on Product Hunt and give NoCodeFounders 2.0 an upvote. By the way, he's already product of the day, so congrats on the launch, JT. And I'll be your host tonight. I'm the co-founder of HuggyStudio, which is a no-code agency from Switzerland that helps entrepreneurs and companies launch their MVP in 4 to 8 weeks. So hi to all my Swiss mates in the room tonight. Do we have all the speakers in the Zoom? Yes. Hi, Nuhi. Perfect. Great. So, first of all, we'll start with a roundtable. And I'll just ask you guys to introduce yourself briefly and explain everyone how you get in contact with no-code at the first place. Also, tell us some words about your company and what you're doing today with no-code and low-code. Nuhi, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure, Daniel. Thank you very much for the opportunity to start. Well, my name is Nuhi Stenvers. My acquaintance with low-code is not very long. I started in 2018 in doing some projects with Mendix. However, my in the past I've been working with earlier model-driven tools like CoolGen, and even before that uppercase, lowercase, like we're now in the low-code, no-code community, all standing on the shoulders of those. But over the last few years, I've really seen how powerful low-code and no-code solutions can be in terms of accelerating IT production and in getting citizen developers also into these projects. ChangeMakers is a really fresh young company. We founded ourselves this year, me and a business partner, Martin van den Berg. And the idea is to build a multi-vendor low-code consulting company, where in the beginning we will focus on supplying capacity and people, and then expand into doing projects and eventually also developing products. That's the longer roadmap. And I'm looking forward to all the discussions that we'll have here in this company. Thanks very much so far.
Thanks, Nuhi.
Back to you. Yeah.
JT, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you. Hi everyone, so I'm JT. I run the NoCodeFounders community, which is a Slack community of founders, entrepreneurs building businesses without code, and that's developed into a new website which we just launched today. My first interaction with no-code was about just over a year ago. I've actually been entrepreneurial since I was a teenager and have not really had a massive desire to learn to become a developer. So I've always used tools and found ways to build things without the requirement to learn to code. So I started out with things like WordPress. I started actually a wedding blog, and then that got acquired. And then I discovered Bubble. I built a remote job board that got acquired last year by We Work Remotely. And that's when I discovered the term no code and realized there was a term for people like myself. So I started the NoCodeFounders Slack as a way to meet people in the same situation as myself, and it's grown from there. And it's just been great to experience the movement over the past 12 months and seeing all the new startups that are coming out of the space. So yeah, really excited to hear from the rest of the panel and have a discussion about things today.
Great. Maurice from Ninox, our sponsor tonight. Is Maurice here?
Gotta unmute myself there. Sorry about that. Hi everyone, happy to be here. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Maurice Huling. I am a business consultant, no-code evangelist, and the head of strategic partnerships at Ninox. Ninox, as Daniel mentioned, is a no-code development platform for business apps. So our platform enables users to build and deploy software applications that really match their business processes, and all without coding. So this is all done via an intuitive drag and drop tools, as well as business logic that's integrated there. So think custom CRM, ERP, invoicing, event planning, really anything that runs on a database. You can build it with Ninox, and you can build it faster and with greater flexibility than with traditional applications. Ninox lives in the cloud, and it's really a powerful collaboration tool for businesses who are looking to migrate away from spreadsheets and accelerate their own digital transformation. How did I get started in no code? So I guess that's kind of a long story, but my background is in investment banking and consulting, which means that historically I have lived inside of spreadsheets for all the frustration that comes along with them, the data silos and multiple versions and lost work and crashing macros and all of that. So I was looking for a better way to manage and analyze information and manage my clients' data. That's kind of when I found Ninox. I met the founders, and it was really easy for me to understand the value proposition because I'm exactly the kind of business user that this platform was designed for. And really similar to JT, I had used tools like Squarespace and WordPress to create websites before, but I hadn't heard the term no code. But now the rabbit hole is kind of open, and I'm super excited about possibilities of the space and all of the ideas, as mentioned, that creators around the world are bringing to life with no code.
Beautiful. Thank you, Maurice. Where is Eddy from WeAreNoCode?
Hey there. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much again, Daniel and everyone else for letting us speak here. Yeah, my no-code journey started 5 years ago. I think at that time, the term wasn't even really coined. The reason why I discovered no-code was mainly due to a pain point. I mean, you have just those ideas in your head that you want to build something, and and the only paths that you have is essentially looking for a technical co-founder, which I've done, or hiring an agency and so on, right? So it's ultimately like not desperation, but just like of a way to get all of those ideas out, right? While discovering no code, that ultimately opened up having ultimately a tool to get those ideas out, which helped me to develop a couple of startups. Some of that failed, some of that we sold. And while going through this journey, I also realized that in many instances, while no code allows you to build startups pretty quickly and test ideas, it's still about validation. So now with no code, the building part is easy, but can you also build a business model around that? So that's why we created WeAreNoCode, which focuses on educating founders and entrepreneurs on coming up with ideas, refining ideas, validating ideas, and then also building out ideas with no code.
Nice. And your partner Christian will be also speaking at the main event.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. Mariam?
Hey, Daniel. Yeah, first of all, hey, everyone, and really pleasure to be here. My journey has been pretty different from all of yours that you just talked about. And the reason is that my background is in product and tech, and I have myself been building software products for quite a long time. And then just about a year ago is where basically my co-founder and I have been building the software products in every other company for about 26 years combined. And we just have seen too much repetition and too much like every company building the same things over and over. So the companies would keep hiring a whole team of engineers to just build payment integrations or messaging systems or all of that. And on the other hand, we have, while also leading tech teams, we have been hiring engineers for quite a long time. And we just have seen the scarcity of engineering talent and how also it's difficult for people to learn how to code, right? Everyone is not going to become an engineer. And then that's where really we thought, why not to have a platform where all of these repetitive components are offered as building blocks. And then on top of that, businesses are building only what's specific to their specific use case. And that's how basically we started really Softr. And that's the time when I just started doing research within the space, etc. And then I figured there is actually a term even associated with it. There are other no-code tools out there. And that's how I basically just came into no-code, started really learning and trying out the other tools. And what we ended up now doing with Softr. So basically Softr aims to be the easiest platform to build web apps without any technical background. We really see a gap in the market where some of the tools are either too simple or static. You can build static things with it, or on the other hand, the tools are pretty complex and they still require a huge learning curve. And that's where we try to fill the gap for the platform to be really easy to use. Still, you can build powerful applications with it, because we believe that's where it would open up really a broad kind of awareness, and not only awareness, but also kind of acceptance and people getting into no-code, because an average person doesn't really have any technical background. So yeah, that's basically our aim, to enable anyone who doesn't have any technical background be able to build software.
Nice, I like it. I like the fact that you're bringing a bit challenges in the no-code space, which brings us to the first question for you and Maurice, actually, because you both bring a no-code platform actually on the market, and I'm sure many people will agree with me. Everything goes so fast within the no-code space, the no-code trend. As you mentioned, JT, I think like 2 years ago, nobody was saying no code, right? And everything goes so fast now, and there are more and more platforms being launched like as we speak. So maybe you first, Mariam, because you just mentioned it. How will the no code map evolve? And like, especially for customer application, right? So that would be the first question. And the second question would be like, what tools will kind of fail? What tools will win? And if you can kind of explain us how software will be positioned in this landscape within the next, let's say, 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to guess really what's going to happen in 5 years' time, right? But one thing that I'm sure that's going to happen is there's going to be multiple tools really starting off, and then yeah, in 5 years' time, some companies will evolve, some companies will maybe buy out each other, or some companies will fail. And just generally, where do I see it going is really, I believe the market, again, as I mentioned, is still pretty early, and the tools as well. There's still lots of issues, but also lots of improvements that need to be happening within the no-code space and with the tools themselves to be able to build really solid applications. And yeah, I mean, where we believe and we want to be really standing by in the future is to be really insanely easy for anyone, for non-tech people to build web apps. Right now, we see that's really the technical aspect is really a barrier for most of the people to enter.
The fact that it's hard to learn.
Exactly. So there is usually a very huge learning curve, which engineers don't do that because otherwise they just prefer learning to code. And then the other people who are non-technical, it's still hard for them to spend months or even year learning the tool.
Okay, so what you're saying ideally is in a future of like, let's say 5 to 10 years, it will become so easy that education platform like WeAreNoCode from Eddy will not have a future.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, so I think the world and the most of the population now knows Excel, right? So the kind of the level of skills right now is on the Excel level. That's kind of the skill that everyone has. I believe that in 5 years' time, people are going to put no-code tools in their resumes instead of Excel. So that's kind of going to be a shift. So that's going to be a default kind of group of tools that they know, and they can mention that I know this tool, I can build something with this or this other thing.
Okay, well, no code is definitely on my CV, so I guess you're right on there. Eddy, I'm sure you're boiling, but we'll get back to you in a second. Morris first, what is your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I really have to echo Mariam on this, and this is something that we talk about all the time, and is really, you know, kind of an aspiration for us at Ninox. I mean, we believe that, you know, in 5 years' time, you know, in 10 years' time, that absolutely no-code platforms are going to become a core competency for business professionals. Mariam mentioned, you know, having these things on your CV, much the way that we have Microsoft Excel, you know, Microsoft Suite on our resumes. We're going to have no-code platforms, especially, you know, for certain roles. People who are working in data science, people who are business analysts, people working in supply chain management, anything where you're managing data. These are going to be core competencies. People are going to be having these things directly on their CVs for sure. I think really the question of how things are going to develop and what we expect kind of revolves around trust for me. I think in 5 years, we're going to see that there are a few players who have really gained the trust of the market and have moved from being invaluable tools, not just for startups, you know, for MVP building, like we'll talk about through, you know, part of this series, but for large organizations. I think that the speed and the flexibility that is coming from these tools is going to be impossible to ignore. And that, you know, large organizations, if they want to keep up and they want to compete, they're going to have to integrate no-code platforms into their strategy. That's really what we see in the future. I can't wait for that day. And it sounds like, Daniel, you're saying you're already including these things. So I would say the no-code stack is going to be the future. And I wouldn't say that things like, you know, Eddy's program are going to be obsolete. But I think the way that we see, you know, things like Code Academy or Lewagon, where, you know, we have kids coming out of university learning how to code. They're going to be coming in out of university, learning these skills, learning these no-code platforms that can be directly applied to go to work, to build businesses, and to contribute to large organizations.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your explanations. We've got a question from the crowd, and I think you're a great candidate to answer that. With Microsoft's acquisition of an automation company, how do you see no-code in the Office package? That question comes from John. So I guess will no-code become kind of like next to Word and Excel, one of the no-code package that Microsoft will offer? What is your position on that, Morris?
I mean, absolutely. They can't ignore it. I mean, Microsoft Power Apps are, you know, already something that people are starting to pick up on. I've had lots of users complain to me about the shortcomings of that particular application. But yeah, absolutely, they're going to catch up. I think that, you know, the no-code movement is impossible to ignore. But what my guess is that, you know, a large organization like Microsoft isn't going to be able to pivot and focus on things the way that, you know, some of the first movers in this space are able to do so. So absolutely, they're going to, you know, provide an offering, and they already are, and, you know, already have large teams that are focused on that. But I think that the first movers in this space that are able to, as we said, gain trust amongst larger organizations are going to be able to kind of have some standing power there.
Thank you, guys. And now, because we mentioned like 5 times Eddy, I guess the next question is for you, Eddy. Where do you see no-code in 5 years, and what role will education play?
Great question. Yeah, I think while we have a conference around no code, and while we talk about no code, I believe we're still, a very small group of individuals that are talking about this. And then from there, even a smaller group that actually starts building. So I believe while we have the perception that no code is something bigger, in a global perspective, it's still very, very tiny. So I think that's why it opens up a larger opportunity to ultimately educate individuals not only on the tools, but also how do they craft use cases that others are paying for. So in this case, how do you essentially build a business? And no code is a means to an end to ultimately achieve that. But at the very end, it's like a customer that has a problem and you want to tailor to that. While no code is easier to learn and such a huge enablement tool, we still focus on not only the building part, but essentially idea validation. So in the next 5 years, I think, very, very similar to Mariam's point, it's like there will be, and now we actually see this explosion of investors funding no-code tools, right? And we have, all of those niche use cases and no-code platforms that come out, which is really, really great because every no-code platform explores where they can be used, right? And I think this is just a very natural cycle, in particular for any technology that is very new. So ultimately, you have a lot of funding getting into it, a lot of use cases are being tried, and then the big absorption is starting to happen where companies start buying each other out, and ultimately, to Morris' point, trust becomes a larger component. Where in that case, large organization just work with X or Y no-code platform because they just know they have a long history. They bought off a couple of companies. So I think in the next couple of years, we see more product teams being widely aware of no-code. We also see the developer community being open to it, in particular when it comes to developing business applications, internal tools. And we also see, founders, and we, see that also now on Product Hunt or any other publishing platforms, where we see more and more startups that fully build their solution on no code or no code/low code, right? We will probably in the next 5 years have that as a common ground. And I think right now is the opportunity for any entrepreneur that wants to kind of like tap into this still competitive advantage of building at a cheaper cost. I think now it's the time to really double down into that.
And if we can just so thank you very much for your points. First of all, super exciting. And the question we had before, like the small joke about WeAreNoCode being obsolete, which was to provoke you a little bit. But what is your opinion on that? If we see no code as being easier and easier and easier, so that everyone can just build a website or web application within a couple of minutes, what will really education play in that future?
Yeah, good question. So I think when it comes to building out more sophisticated products rather than just a landing page with 5 functions, education would still play a bigger role. And I think now if we just, go back to how many people know about no code and how many people should know about no code, I think it's still a large opportunity for the next 5 years and beyond, because even in no code, there are many niches. One, no code for building, no code in enterprise, no code for automation. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in educating people on that and essentially helping them use the full power of no code.
Love it. I think there are many synergies, and I mean with JT and NoCodeFounders, and we'll get to it in a couple of seconds. I really want to get a point of Nuhi, because we have a question from the crowd, which is from Matthew, which is, do you expect low code to move towards no code? And Nuhi, before you answer that question, I know you have some serious experience integrating low code applications into existing IT landscape. And for the crowd, Nuhi, can you please explain us in a few words, what is low code, and where do you see the most opportunity in low code in the next 5 years? And finally, close that answer with the question from Matthew, which is, do you think low code will become no code?
Thank you, Daniel. For the first, for me, integrating low-code applications into larger landscapes for big enterprises has been a learning curve, in the sense that it's not only about the platform, but it's also about the consultants utilizing the platform, actually being consultants and actually having the skill set to work with subject matter experts in these large organizations to do the right, to get the right use cases above, to get the user stories on paper, and to work from that kind of structured sense into the low-code platform. I'm lucky enough to work in Holland. Holland is the basis for Mendix and for Betty Blocks, two really big platforms in the low-code and no-code sphere. Their market penetration actually in the Netherlands is quite huge already. A lot of enterprises and larger SME municipalities and so using these platforms. So I think Holland is kind of an example of the rest of the world in these platforms, in utilizing these platforms. As for the question that Matthew posed, does low code tend towards no code? I think there's two ways to view that. I think a lot of the platforms are growing towards each other, because obviously as a platform you have the tendency to incorporate more and more functionality from your environment and to try to supply to a continuously larger user base. So there's a natural tendency of platforms coming from different angles to grow towards each other. So in that sense, I think no code, low code will definitely move towards each other. On the other hand, I see platforms like Mendix and to a lesser extent Betty Blocks also very much going into the enterprise space, and in that space trying to close holes, like working in very high transaction volumes, working in pretty set architectural spaces where they have to find their own kind of place. So the larger low-code platforms are already in a different dynamics than the newer no-code platforms, I think.
Thanks so much. And are you saying that, because you're saying that large companies have already adopted low code, kind of, not all of them, but a huge chunk of it. Yeah. Are you saying that low code is being like faster to spread than no code? Because we still see a lot of resistance towards no code, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I think no code is in larger enterprises and larger organizations still going to be a challenge, because there's always IT departments that kind of want more traditional type tools in the landscape, right? And I think low code propositions like Mendix and OutSystems and so on, Force.com are more tuned to that kind of influence. On the other hand, I think with effective no-code platforms, you could very well march into larger enterprises through the business angle. I mean, that's how Mendix got out of the starting blocks in the end as well. I mean, they typically didn't enter those organizations from the IT department, but from a business manager with a problem. And I think that is the way to go for no-code platforms as well. Don't go through IT departments, keep them aligned, but try to do business with people who actually have IT problems to solve.
So can I simply? Oh yeah, there is.
Yeah, if I may, I just wanted to kind of bring the perspective from the other no-code side. I do believe it's really different target groups that we are talking to. No-code is really targeting more like non-technical people, rather it's more from consumer perspective, or even like non-technical departments within big companies. So if we talk to a marketing person or salesperson, most probably low-code tools are going to be probably pretty difficult for them to adapt, because they still require some level of technical involvement. And I think for no-code tools, it's much easier to get into kind of more consumer space, but also to the non-tech departments in bigger companies where they have some internal type of use cases to be built. But yeah, to me, low-code is more specific to more bigger enterprises, which then integrates into kind of existing IT infrastructure.
I definitely agree with you, Mariam, there.
So can we simplify that point that says low code is to increase efficiency of software development for software developers, and no code is not right?
Not entirely for me, Daniel, because I see the low-code platform utilization. In low-code platform utilization, you see not so much the traditional software developer utilizing the platform. It's more the business consultant with a technical kind of side to them that acquire the knowledge to utilize the platform. So it's not entirely that, but it is focused on actually improving productivity and producing 100% fit software, where otherwise you would utilize traditional coding environments.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for your inputs. I think I would love to have the opinion of JT on that as well. JT, you've been starting your NoCodeFounders community some time ago now, and you have now, I think, several thousands people interested in the no-code space. Do you also cover some of the low-code space? And how did you see your community grow? And what do you think, how will your community grow within the next 5 years? Which people will you be serving? And who will they be actually?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. And it's probably quite a complex answer. So I think NoCodeFounders as a community, we target entrepreneurial people. So the no-code space at the moment, there's a lot of talk about functionality, but probably not so much talk about monetization and design. And really that's the focus of NoCodeFounders, is to help people use these tools to build profitable businesses. So that has a very wide audience base. So there's definitely an element of low code in there, because a lot of people in the no code space are often quite technical. You know, there are developers who are using no code tools as part of their stack to speed things up. And we've now got kind of crossover tools like Builder, BILDR, which is really low code. It's kind of a visual programming tool. So I think there's, for the founder space and entrepreneur market, I would agree with Mariam that it's more no-code tools for the majority of that market, but there's definitely utilization of low-code as well in there. Just very, very much depends on the individual. I think it's about finding the tool that's right for your use case, which is becoming a harder challenge all the time as more tools enter the space. It's becoming quite difficult to navigate which tools to use in your stack. So it will be interesting. So yeah, I mean, and the second part, and where would I see the community in 5 years' time, would be, I think that no code is breaking down the barriers to entry into the tech space. So 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to build the things that I have built had I not learned to code. And I think now, especially with the situation in the world, there's more people looking for other sources of income and ways to make money on the side. So I think there's just going to be a massive uptake in people looking to be entrepreneurial and will find no-code tools as their way to do that. So I think it's going to be a global movement, and I think it's going to be for existing companies or existing founders who are starting the next project. I think there's going to be a lot of people using no-code as their MVP at the very least. So the way that we approach building is going to change, even for developers and technical people, that they're going to release their early versions on no-code. It'll be interesting to see how long they stick with a no-code stack as they scale up. But yeah, that's what I'd say.
Thanks so much. Any inputs from the other panelists on that?
Yeah, I think JT is so right. I mean, like something that we've also observed is, especially for founders, entrepreneurs, or people that are just new to it and planning to develop a business, that the building part and the monetization part are totally two different things. And in many instances, we see, you know, people that get into no code get really excited about the building part, which is great. Ultimately, you're learning skills and so on. But you know, many, or you know, only a few also achieve to essentially to monetize and create a full-on business around that, right? And I think nonetheless, getting into no code is great because ultimately you have the skills of building different solutions, and ultimately you just need to be right once when it comes to developing something and addressing a market. And while also going through some of the questions here, I think, you know, one question that Michelle brought up is around the discovery phase. And ultimately, I think when it comes to like building a business, no code in that case plays a huge role in the discovery phase, creating your first, you know, be it in that case, simple MVP to ultimately more complex MVP. And then to JT's point, you know, maybe you stick with no code if you're at a larger scale, or you in that case, you know, explore any other additional options.
I think go ahead.
Go ahead. I mean, I have to really agree. And I think that one of the things that is so exciting and that both Josh and Eddy hit on is, you know, the access that no code tools are providing. And obviously there needs to be a focus on actually building sustainable businesses and having the right idea, having the right solution. But more than ever, we're seeing that no code is unleashing a whole new generation of creators, people who have had ideas, as we all do. You know, every day people have you know, actionable ideas that we see solutions for. But previously, there just wasn't the accessibility to go and solve problems using tech for your everyday person. And I think now we're seeing a transformation, and people are able to say, hey, I have the tools available to me to go out and build that, to go out and test if there's a market for this, to see if this is something that people would pay for. And that's you know, a lever for lifting people, you know, out of their socioeconomic status, breaking down the barriers that were really, you know, always prevalent in traditional tech. And I think that's an exciting thing to, you know, to be talking about, and it really goes in line with the educational things that are being offered by WeAreNoCode.
Yeah, I was gonna say exactly kind of the same idea. To me, no code is really creating just a new category, especially the no code that doesn't require any technical background, because until those tools existed, or even like right now, it's still difficult to some extent. People have millions of ideas, right? There are people who have specific problems in specific communities, or I mean, the world is big, and usually the ideas that are getting funded or become big, they are like very venture type of ideas who can become big. But there is millions of other ideas which can solve a specific problem, whether it's a community that has that, or there is a specific problem within, I mean, someone has the skills, maybe they want to monetize it, etc. So I do think that basically those people, prior really no code tools existence, they don't have any other choice. This category doesn't really exist, but no code tools are really opening up a new category of new entrepreneurs really being emerged, because everyone basically can build a business. Everyone can become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I think it's not only that, Mariam, it's also in existing organizations. There's, I think, both no-code and low-code tools are creating a whole new layer in the market where organizations can create value with 100% fit-for-purpose software. Whereas in the even recent past, they had to rely on commercial off-the-shelf packaged software, which always had like this little ill-fitting kind of sense, this kind of sand in the collar kind of feeling that it wasn't really up for the job. There was always a lot of issues in implementations and so on. And I feel these platforms can play a really big role in remedying, how do you say, repairing that.
Guys, I feel so much like energy and positive vibes, but I would like to come up with something I hear all the time. Like when I meet customers or people who hear about no code for the first time, I always get the same questions. First of all is, can we scale? Can we scale with no code or low code? What are the limitations, right? And the second point is, what are the limitations of no code? Because at some point, limitations must exist. So that's what I always hear, the questions I always get, the questions I need to answer. And I would like really to hear, like, what do you guys think about that? What are the limitations that no code have today? And what are the limitations that will kill no code, if so to say, so that no code needs to trespass in order to really like achieve this future you're talking about that looks so promising and exciting? Feel free to start, whoever has an opinion.
Yeah, happy to address the scaling question. This is in many instances a question that we also get from founders. It's like, oh, can I scale to 200,000 monthly active users, right? And our answer in many instances is like, well, if you had 200,000 monthly active users, you have totally different problems, and that's actually a really good thing. But also at the same time, like to put it into perspective, not many actually get there, right? So the scaling question, so like out of 100 ideas or 100 ideas that people develop with no code, how many of those are actually hitting the barrier when it comes to scale, right? Not many. But if you do hit the barrier, and there are some no-code platforms that basically say, hey, if you get so many users on our platform, we're happy to allocate our resources more to your project to adjust any functions so that you can scale further, because for us, it's a great PR story, right? So I mean, I would love to hear actually Mariam's point on this. But if you have like a customer, right, that ultimately gets accepted to YC, gets a bunch of funding behind it, everyone is railing about it, I think Mariam, as a founder of a no-code platform, she would be invested to make that a success story as well, right? And this is something that I've heard from platform founders over and over again, that they say, hey, if we have a gigantic success story, we're heavily invested in making them a success and keeping them on our platform.
Yeah, I also think I completely agree with you. On the other hand, I mean, it's not only scalability, but currently as no-code space and the tools are still so early, there is quite many other issues related to that, right? Like there's the learning curve, ease of use. There's also like the security issue, because right now, if you build something, most of the tools you build with, it's easy to hack. If you are an engineer, you can hack the built product, which, for example, if there is some kind of gated content, if you're an engineer, you can basically get access to the content that is behind the gate. However, I think it's just a matter of time. In several years, there's just going to be, the platforms are going to mature enough, and there's going to be more and more use cases being supported by these tools. I mean, just on the scalability note, it's just a matter of how the whole infrastructure and the setup of the platform has been from the very beginning, what you have, what's the long-term vision, whether you really want to just have a prototyping tool, or you really want to support like companies, startups scaling with you. If you have that in mind, then it's also possible to set this kind of infrastructure in a way that companies can scale with you. And I think it's just a matter of time that we see more and more no-code tools being able to support those use cases. And I do agree. I mean, nowadays, especially now that there is not so much awareness within the people, most of the people who use no-code tools, they mainly are using for kind of getting something into the market, trying and validating. And then I agree with Eddy completely. There is just very limited number of people that go beyond that kind of stage. And if they go, like at least for our case with Softr, we have kind of scalability and security at the core of the platform. So we really want our customers to scale with us while they go. And that's just a matter of not only the infrastructure, but also how customizable these people can make their use cases, right? Because as they grow, they're going to have more and more custom use cases, more specifics that maybe the platform doesn't provide. But at that point, it might be a completely different question, whether you really want to have all of these customizations on a platform, because then it would also be hard to maintain or change something, because the whole idea of no-code tool would be to make it easy to kind of have some product which is easy to also iterate on. And then at that point, I would argue then it's a question of cost, and it's a question of flexibility that the company wants to have. And most probably at some point, companies are gonna switch back to engineering and having some engineering team in-house. But to that stage, really, there is just not many companies reaching. And before that, there is just millions of ideas, millions of like startups that could already leverage no-code tools and build up their entire products.
Thanks so much. JT, what is your view on that? I'm sure you get those questions asked a lot.
Yeah, I think it largely comes down as well to the business sector or type of business. So, for example, I don't think you'd find many founders building fintech products with no code, because there's a kind of trust barrier on the security. Then on the other hand, you get kind of newsletter businesses or publishing businesses which have completely non-tech stacks and can go up to, I know of one that turns over $13 million, and it's a one-person business. So I think often the scaling up can be in terms of monetization rather than in terms of people. And one of the great things about no-code is how quickly and how lean the development can be. So you can build a complicated app, similar to something that's being built by a team of 40 people on your own. So I think the scaling up could be too linked to people in a sense. So a lot of the time when we're talking about scaling up a business, we're talking about hiring, and no-code largely solves that problem. So I think what's really exciting to me is that there's going to be a lot of micro SaaS businesses and these really small businesses, but with large revenue. Small businesses with maybe 1 to 5 people, but they're serving hundreds of thousands of customers, and that's going to be completely possible. So I can imagine that as a future of a lot of micro startups rather than Amazons and things coming out of the no-code space.
Thanks so much. Maurice, do you want to jump on it? Because
absolutely. I would say that I would completely echo what Josh was saying, and that it really matters about what use case are we talking about. I mean, Josh, you mentioned fintech. Yeah, you're not building a fintech platform and pushing it out to millions of consumers using no code. But if you're talking about, internal business applications, things that are going to be used, for business segments within your organization, that's already here. We're already to the point where these applications are scalable and able to manage millions of transactions on a daily basis. So it really has to do with the kind of use case that you're talking about, whether it's internal versus consumer facing. But again, it comes back to the question of trust, as far as what is going to be the biggest hurdle for rolling these types of applications out to large organizations. And that's just going to come with time and with the success of, the champions that are the first movers.
Yeah,
Oh, you want to add something, please?
Yeah, there's 2 pieces that JT mentioned that I want to really kind of like elaborate a little bit on, because I think they're really interesting. One, the rise of solopreneurs. So in this case, individuals, not teams, being able to create and sustain a business, which I think something that we've also seen overall. And then when it comes to micro SaaS businesses, that also is something that we've seen, like small use cases, right? Let's say, I don't know, like a SaaS business that is quite successful in the United States, then in that case apply to Azerbaijan, and and some kid there is monetizing the whole country there, right? And I think this is something that is really overlooked in the no code community, I believe, in terms of like seeing that there are individuals that are able to get a sizable amount of revenue in and pretty much, you know, keep the majority of it, right? And I think for many, this basically means like a business that can bring you 5 to 50, 60K a month, which for many, it's not a unicorn, it's not $100 million business, but it's a really healthy business that that you can run. And then on top of that, like, what's the running cost? Well, the running cost in this case, we're talking about a couple $100. I mean, if you think about all of the subscriptions that you might need, you know, a couple of platforms that you use that run for 20, 30 bucks, but it's just like mind blowing what that essentially means to solopreneurs and the revenue that they can capture.
Thank you, Eddy. So there's one point from Thomas that I'll read right now. Just before that, just want to make a small statement as well, and want to hear your opinion if you disagree with that, because I see a very strong limitation on with no-code tools, being that you will never be able to beat a tech company that brands tech as a, because whenever you, then you'll be just as good as the platform that provides you the tools to build a solution, right? So does anyone disagree with that fact that you'll not be able to build the performance of a tech team?
Yeah, happy to chip into it again. I think let's put it at reality, right? You're developing or testing something with no code where you're paying like $2,000, right? Like $2,000 to test it and scale it on all of them, right? If you get to a large amount of users and you need higher customization and so on, you're probably at a point where you need to reevaluate. You might, in that case, are able to hire a specialized team to essentially build it out, right? I don't think having expectations that you can pay, you know, $2,000 a month or $1,000 a month to have, you know, various, you know, like a solution that is, and then scale itself to, you know, an Uber and so on, it might be a little bit too far off a stretch.
I'd like to chip in into that as well briefly. I completely agree with you, Eddy, and I see that in the larger enterprises where they start utilizing these tools, that there's a tremendous focus on functional requirements at the beginning. And then when you later want to expand functionality or the landscape in which an app is actually used becomes larger or different, things are sometimes getting a bit harder because certain non-functional requirements at the beginning didn't have the attention they should have had. And that might lead to some refactoring or some revising of apps or logic in the apps that you've been building before. So I recognize that from the enterprise space as well.
Amazing, thank you. And that answers the question of Thomas, who was asking, in my opinion, creating products with no-code platforms is efficient on the MVP level. As the product grows and more complexity is needed, it would probably be faster to do such changes if this would be written from scratch. So yeah, okay, that last part was not answered. What is your opinion on this? So do you always assume that you need to build with no-code as an MVP and then start from scratch as it works? So guys, for into it, maybe JT, you want to give your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think there's different aspects. One is that some platforms allow you to export your code, so you could export and then start building from there. So I don't think that's necessarily a barrier. The second thing is, if you do have to move to a tech stack, I still think it's worth starting on a no-code stack because it takes such little time and you don't want to waste any time at the validation process. So I think that added work later on is worth it for the fast validation at the beginning. And the other thing is that I think potentially people are too focused on trying to build the next Amazon. And I think kind of what Eddy was saying before, I think a much healthier approach is that we can build businesses which are extremely profitable and have these small teams. And I think in many ways that's a much better goal. Just from a lifestyle perspective, like what NoCode allows us to do is to build these businesses without completely bootstrapped, without getting funding or small amounts of funding, and build up sustainable businesses which make fantastic profits with very little overheads. And you've not got the stresses of running big teams and your job turning into HR as you're constantly hiring. So I think there's I don't see the switching over to code at a later stage as a massive inhibitor in any way, really.
Love it.
I think on the other hand, I mean, if we look across all of these startups and companies that are being built, I think so nowadays we only see the ones that become unicorn, or are they kind of really the ones on the journey to the really big companies? But that's just like very small percentage of the whole potential possible startups, right? The other part, first of all, it's not really visible because people don't talk about it. But on the other hand, there's like millions of use cases that, first of all, big companies do not have the time, do not have the result for them. The ROI is not big enough to really focus on. And there are so many niche, smaller kind of problems that individuals, or not only individuals, but kind of smaller companies can tackle and really still build healthy businesses. Several thousands a month, which is a great business because that solves a specific problem within a specific context. And yeah, I just do believe that those startups, like they're probably 90% of the startups really on earth are those types of startups, and not really a venture-backed or unicorn startups. And that is where I believe no-code tools are going to serve much bigger and give much bigger ROI to these teams.
Okay, so guys, just keep your ambition low and just make 50,000 a month. That will be just fine enough. I love the discussion. Before we move to the networking session, I just want to end up real quick with a final question for our two guests who serve companies, Nuhi and Morris. You serve companies, and we have a question from Akex that I kind of like. Why are not so many companies using low or no code? Question mark, question mark. I don't get it. Are they afraid? Question mark. So just within a short sentence, Morris and Nuhi, what's going on with companies?
I mean, I think we touched on it already. I mean, it's two things. It's one trust and two knowledge and education. Then both of those things will come with time.
Nuhi, you agree?
And on top of that, organizations, the larger they get, the more conservative they tend to get in adopting new things. Eh? So that's a third thing that's kind of in play there, I think. But at least in Holland, we see the landscape evolving really, really rapidly.
Mm-hmm. And we're seeing the same. I mean, our move into enterprise has been accelerated by COVID. It would be an understatement to say that it's been accelerated by COVID. And this is something that people are waking up to.
True, I agree.